How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to show you exactly what it's like to drive this 2016 ultraviolet purple Porsche Gt3Rs. If you haven't yet seen my full review of the car, I suggest doing so. I go over the car in its entirety from a more holistic approach, not just what it's actually like to drive. But here we go. We've got ourselves a 2016 Gt3Rs. Honestly, one of the best looking cars Porsche has ever made. From its massive stationary rear wing in the back to its titanium exhaust there, wheel and tire setup from a 918 Spider. It's got similar ducts on the side as the 911 Turbo, but of course the Gt3Rs is not turbocharged. And of course we have the signature fender vents. This entire piece is carbon fiber, by the way, that allow turbulent airflow from the wheel arches to escape outwards, allowing for twice the downforce in the front of the vehicle if it were not to have it. Now, because there's twice the downforce in the front, that means we can have a bigger rear wing, adding up to twice the downforce of the previous generation Gt3Rs. Up to 760 pounds of downforce, by the way, at 125 miles an hour. Now, this is the key, an option. There are many options with Porsches, is to actually have it finished in the same color of the car. Let's go ahead and pop the front trunk to reveal how much space we've got. Actually pretty large for a track-focused car. As you can see, I've got my camera bag in here. You could fit probably 2 carry-on bags to go to the airport in this thing if you ever wanted to do so. More on weight savings. This car is all about weight savings, carbon fiber hood. You'll also notice this badge isn't actually a badge, it's a sticker. More for weight savings. What a good looking car this is. Let's go ahead and hop in the vehicle. Now, when we hop into the Gt3Rs, this is quite difficult. The carbon fiber buckets have really tall sides to them, and if you put the steering wheel in a low enough position to where it's comfortable to drive aggressively, there's not all that much space in between the seat and the steering wheel for your legs to swing in. Now, for those who want a more comfortable seating experience, there are 18-way adjustable seats, power adjustable that is, that are a no-cost option, although these lightweight carbon fiber buckets not only look cool, they feel really great, hold you in place in the turns. Now, with all Porsches, we've got the ignition on the left. We stick the key in here. Let's go ahead and fire up the engine. Now, why is the key itself on the left? That is to hark back to Porsche's heritage in Le Mans. In the initial years, races actually started with the driver outside of the vehicle. The cars were lined up against a wall, and people would actually run to the car and hop in. In order to put the car in gear at the same time as turning it on, they put the key to the left, saved a bit of time, and made it easier. Pretty cool for innovation, and I love that they still keep that. Nice steering wheel. With most Porsches, the steering wheels are quite small, although it feels like the perfect size to me. One complaint I had with this chrome trim here is that if it's really sunny, the sun will actually reflect off this straight back into your eyes, but that's a minor gripe. We have the Porsche PDK transmission paddles right here at 9 and 3. I wish they were a little bit larger, but this is one of the best transmissions in the game. Got your gear select lever here. Now, the only transmission available in the Gt3Rs for the 991 generation is the 7-speed PDK. Go ahead and shift it into drive. If you push it over to the left, that puts it in manual. We've got 2 options for the PDK in terms of its speed, PDK Sport or normal. We'll go ahead and leave it in sport. Let's go ahead and put it back into park. There's some other buttons here. We've got loud mode for the exhaust and a front lift system. When you click that front lift system, the front raises faster than any other car I've ever experienced. Now, the front lift, if you delete that, it saves you about 9 pounds, although you're better off having the front lift because, well, it is a relatively low car. Beautiful analog tachometer and speedo with some digital elements mixed in. As you can see, the red line is very high. The Gt3Rs revs all the way up to 8,800 RPMs. How crazy is that? Some of the elements of the interior, there's no door handles. They're straps to save weight. Lots of carbon fiber everywhere. I love these yellow contrasted seat belts. Of course, a fire extinguisher, and US spec cars did not actually get roll cages. In terms of visibility, massive front windshield. The actual rear view mirror is nice and large too, gives you great visibility out of the rear. Despite that massive rear wing, it doesn't actually block much of your view whatsoever. You're able to see out quite well. Over the side, plenty of visibility there. Over the left side, just a tiny bit of blockage, but seriously, it is an easy car to drive. And the mirrors do a great job of allowing you to see all angles of the car. And because the dimensions are small, you can really see and place this car on the road very easily. All right, let's take it for a spin. We'll put it into drive, put PDK Sport on, Sport Suspension on, and leave it in automatic mode just to see what that's like for the initial driving experience. Put the front lift up that activates super quickly, allowing you to get in and out of things quite easily. And off we go. As you can see, that's just in automatic mode with the transmission in sport, and it already, with the slightest amount of gas, it's ready. It downshifted in a second for me, and it upshifts quite aggressively. Slow down, it'll automatically downshift. We'll speed up again, shifting into third. Honestly, this transmission knows what you want to do more so than you do, actually. It's pretty crazy, but you know what? This is a GT3 RS, so we are going to slip it over to the left to put it into full manual mode. The transmission response is incredible in this car, truly incredible. The PDK gearbox is the benchmark for double clutch gearboxes, and it's truly the best system out there. Downshifts, instantaneous, upshifts, even at partial throttle, are just razor sharp. Honestly, the second your hand moves on the paddle, the shift has already happened. Steering is electronically assisted. It is not hydraulic steering, although it feels just as good as its hydraulic older counterpart does. They nailed it with the steering on the Porsche, which of course is extremely necessary given the fact that Porsches are all about the driving experience. It was controversial when they switched over from hydraulic assisted steering to electronically controlled steering, but Porsche, above everyone else, has done a fantastic job of maintaining road feel. I mean, you can truly feel all the little bumps that you can see up there. All of them are transmitted up through the tires, through the wheels, through the suspension, through the steering column, up into the steering wheel itself, providing you with phenomenal feedback. This car is so easily placeable on the street, especially with that good visibility. The hood slopes down instantly. You can really see where the RS is on the road. And honestly, it's not an intimidating car to drive whatsoever. Yeah, it's 200 grand and it makes 500 horsepower, but anyone could drive one of these. Speaking of 200 grand, this car is actually for sale for a little bit less than $198,000 at Ogara Coach in Westlake right now. So special thanks to them for letting me pilot this GT3 RS. This thing is a downright blast. Suspension geometry, very much the same as the GT3, although we've got 50mm wider track in the front as well as the rear. We've also got a retuned electronically controlled damper setup for the GT3 RS. It rides pretty hard, I'll tell you that, but I'd expect and want nothing less from a GT3 RS. Speaking of things you'd expect from a GT3 RS, one of which is the sound. We've got a 4-liter flat 6 making 500 horsepower, more like 520 because it's pretty conservative, and 339 pound-feet of torque. It's naturally aspirated, and it produces one of the best sounding noises ever in a car. And that's partly because it revs up to 8,800 RPMs. Let's go ahead and roll the window down a little bit. The window controls are on the side here, right next to the mirror controls. It's not all that loud, actually, until you really step on the gas. It's pretty composed. Especially those blats between the shifts. That PDK transmission barely interrupting the power whatsoever, but produces such a phenomenal noise. My gosh. Oh, that is just epic. Now, the 991.1, which is this generation of the GT3 RS, does only come with a PDK gearbox, but there are rumors that the 991.2, the 2018 GT3 RS, might have a 3-pedal layout. That's right, we might actually see a manual transmission appear in the GT3 RS. They did it with the new 911 GT3, But there's rumors going both ways. There's whispers over from Weissach that there's going to be a 3-pedal layout, then Porsche shuts it down. Nobody's really sure, but imagine this car with some updates with a manual gearbox. How crazy would that be? There's been some spy shots. The hood of the new GT3 RS has knockaducts like on the GT2 RS. In fact, a lot of it looks like the GT2 RS. There's also rumors that the car might have a 4.2-liter engine as opposed to the 4-liter that's in this. Imagine power will bump from 500 to maybe 530, somewhere in that range. Now, the GT3 RS has optional carbon ceramic brakes. I emphasize optional because typically on a car like this, you're used to having carbon ceramics as standard, especially given the fact that the 911 Turbo S actually has carbon ceramic brakes as standard. You'd imagine that the track-focused GT3 RS would as well, but I guess they wanted to drop the base price down, keep it at what it is currently, $178,250. Carbon ceramics will cost you over $9,000 as an option. This car actually has them equipped currently. Now, the normal brakes, of course, stop just as quickly. The carbon ceramics just do a better job at mitigating brake fade on the track. But let's go ahead and slam the brakes here. And the car slows itself down insanely fast. Open it up a little bit here. Wow. That engine sound is just spectacular. The RS is all about the driving experience. Driving this thing is one of the most rewarding experiences behind the wheel of any car out there. It's not the fastest in the world in a straight line, but that really doesn't matter. The steering feels so good. It sounds so good. It's just so easy and fun to drive and explore the limits of. I can't really think of anything else out there in this price range that'll put a smile on your face, that'll be as much fun as a GT3 RS, especially as they're dropping below $200,000. It's honestly incredible. This car is so unbelievably planted on the road. Turn-in is instantaneous, and just the smallest amount of steering input results in the car flying around turns a lot quicker than you think would be possible, and with a lot less drama as well. It's partly due to the tire setup, the suspension setup, and the aerodynamics. The tires are actually the same as on a 918 Spider. We've got 265 3520s in the front and 325 3021s in the rear. Pilot Sport Cup 2s, although this car actually has Super Sport since the Cup 2s were probably eaten away by the previous owner, but the levels of grip are just astronomical. Now, in the $200,000 price range, what else drives like a GT3 RS? Well, nothing quite drives like one, but its competitors. The McLaren 570S, the base price starts at $10,000 more than a GT3 RS at $188,000. 3.8-liter twin-turbo V8, so totally different setup. We've got a V8 instead of a flat 6, and it's forced induction, not naturally aspirated. The McLaren weighs about 100 pounds more than this car, but it makes 562 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque, so quite a bit more power and torque. Is it as much fun to drive? Well, it's nimble, it looks incredible, it's got doors that go up, the interior is definitely fancier. It's a McLaren, but no, it doesn't sound nearly as good as this flat 6. The twin-turbo V8 just sounds too muffled, too refined. It has no drama to it. And while it might impress more people, I've had more fun in this than a 570S. Now, we've also got from Lamborghini the LP580-2. The rear-wheel drive version starts at just a tiny bit below $200,000, has a naturally aspirated engine, 5.2-liter V10, making 573 horsepower and 398 pound-feet of torque. That car, absolute riot, drift machine, sounds good, looks good, definitely a very interesting competitor to the GT3 RS. Which one would you buy? Honestly, that's just up to you, personal preference. If you want this slightly more, I don't want to say understated, because this has a massive wing, and especially in ultraviolet, yeah, this thing stands out. But in a white or a black, it's definitely going to be a little bit more understated than the Lamborghini. For people who like that, go with the Porsche. For people who want something a little bit more, well, out there, a little bit more ridiculous looking, the Lamborghini is also an awesome option. Now, while some people might find the fact that this car has quote-unquote only 500 horsepower to be a negative compared to its competitors, I in a way see it as a positive. This is the most confidence-inspiring supercar out there today. Now, I'm not saying its competitors have too much power, but they're starting to push the boundaries of ridiculous, I mean, just absolute ridiculous acceleration. So much so that if you're not driving them on the track, it can be a little bit hard to have as much fun. When you're going flat out, the cars accelerate so scary fast that all of a sudden you're at the next turn and you don't even have time to think and to slow down. With the GT3 RS, yes, it's pretty damn quick, but it's at that perfect level where you can floor it and slam the brakes, turn in, feel that mechanical grip, exit the turn, floor it, slam the brakes, turn in, and actually enjoy it as a non-professional driver, just as a driving enthusiast. And I love that about it. You really can push this car harder and harder and start to experience the limits of the grip, the limits of the car more safely than you can on something like a McLaren 720S or a 488 or a Huracan, that you can just have a ton of fun without worrying about actually just killing yourself. And it does feel like it wants you to just push it harder and harder through a turn, like it's taking you through a journey. It's teaching you how to be a better driver. I love that. I deeply love that. Let's talk about the seats. These carbon fiber buckets in the GT3 RS. They hold you in place like nobody's business. Now, what I mentioned before, they are pretty hard to get into, but once you're in, you are locked into place. The actual bolstering for the shoulders is the massive part. That's what keeps you in place. It doesn't squeeze you. You could be a bigger individual and actually fit in these seats, which is not true of a lot of carbon fiber bucket seats. They're decently comfortable, although not as comfortable as the carbon buckets in the Ferrari F12 that I recently drove. Overall, though, I do think you could drive this on a daily basis. Not the most comfortable or most practical car to daily drive, but you could do it. Oh, the steering is just absolutely brilliant. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love this car. Honestly, guys, one of the most fun cars to drive I have ever experienced in my entire life. And I am not just saying that because it's a GT3 RS and that's what you're supposed to say. That is my honest opinion of the way this car drives. Now, given the fact that more than 60% of the weight is over the rear of the GT3 RS, it's not the most forgiving car if you do mess up around a turn. That's why we've got traction control on right now. We've got 2 stages, ESC off and then ESC off plus traction control off. This car will spin like a top if you don't know what you are doing, but in order to get there, you gotta really push the car to exceed the limits of its mechanical grip. It is interesting though how truly unbalanced the weight distribution is on this RS, and how despite that it's still able to handle so well, set such fantastic lap times. Truly is an engineering marvel that Porsche has been able to accomplish. Speaking of engineering marvels, the new Porsche GT2 RS that's about to come out. That car, it's an even more extreme version of the GT3 RS. Now, you don't get that naturally aspirated instant response and sound, but it's Porsche we're talking about, so I imagine the way the turbos will spool up is very much instantaneous, and it won't really feel like the car has forced induction. Now, that car, 3.8 liter twin turbocharged 6-cylinder, 700 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque. Now, with Porsche, I imagine those figures are conservative yet again, and because it's turbocharged, they're likely extremely conservative. It'll be interesting to see how truly fast that car is, and, well, it holds the Nürburgring lap record, so there's one thing. The base price of that car, $293,000, is over 100 grand more than the base price of a GT3 RS. And given the fact that it is brand new and it's a limited run Porsche, people are selling their allocations for up to $150,000 to $200,000 over sticker when none of the cars have even hit the roads yet. I've got to say, one of the coolest parts about the PDK gearbox is when you shift at full throttle at redline, The force at which it thrusts you forwards in between shifts is absolutely staggering. It doesn't have an abrupt cut of power. In fact, it feels like it gets more powerful in between shifts, which of course is impossible, but the little bit of wheel spin in between the first to second shift, oh, makes this car such a joy, such a downright blast to drive. Honestly, this gearbox is the best double clutch gearbox in the world, no doubt about it. Honestly, the driving experience in the GT3 RS is one of the most pure, the most brutal, the most exciting, exhilarating, fun, incredible driving experience of any car that's currently available to date. Other than some bigger paddles and maybe a seat that's a little bit easier to get into, I wouldn't change a thing in the world on the GT3 RS. This is one of the most perfect cars I've ever driven in my entire life. And the car is just fun, man. That's what it's all about. It is all about having fun in your sports car. And the RS gives you that and more. Well, there you guys have it. One of the best cars I've ever driven in my entire life. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like always, please browse the channel and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next video.